Just as another quarterback is ready to be thrown into the transfer portal hopper, another quarterback appears to be on the mend and close to returning. Let's talk all about that and more right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball, and the college football playoff is here, and you don't want to miss a moment of the action. The college football playoff presented by Allstate begins with 4 first-round games starting in 2 days, December 20th and 21st, on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and streaming on Max. And we got plenty to get to on the program, and another Missouri victory, 10 in a row for the Tigers now after losing 20 in a row going back to last season. Surely that's never happened before in the history of college basketball, but I don't know. Somebody proved me wrong there. We're going to talk some hoops a little later in the program, but of course I want to start on the gridiron, where there is another name to add to what I'm calling the quarterback panic meter. Now, for those of you who aren't everydayers, first of all, get with the program. But second of all, yesterday on the program, I said Malik Murphy, formerly of Duke, who's entered the transfer portal, and also Fernando Mendoza, formerly of the University of California. Well, those are the two guys. If those two young men sign elsewhere other than Missouri, well, then it's time to panic. Well, I'm going to name one other guy, a guy who is reportedly on a visit with Missouri today. That is Penn State transfer quarterback Beau Pribula. And I mentioned him indirectly recently, and not actually by name, because I was simply giving some context for the recent losses in the transfer portal for the Tigers, saying, hey, even teams in the playoff like Penn State and Georgia are losing relatively important players, a backup quarterback, a third-string corner, that type of deal. Well, what I didn't realize at the time is that, well, he might just be an option to start at Missouri. Now, Missouri's Music City Bowl opponent, by the way, the Iowa Hawkeyes, another team in pursuit of Pribula, also UCF as well. And UCF, which was a pretty run-heavy team last season. Well, I'll tell you this, Pribula at the very least I think would help Missouri's running game tremendously. So if you are Missouri and you're looking for another running back with the departure of Kewan Lacey, well, I think Pribula at the very least is going to be a dynamic enough runner that he's going to help out your tailbacks at the very least, and of course just help your running game in general. Now, as to his actual passing acumen, I think he's obviously got enough arm talent from what I can see. I just frankly haven't had enough time or hours in the day to, deep dive the tape on every single Missouri potential quarterback here. Once we actually sign the guy, that's when I'll take my deep dive, to be honest with you there. But beyond just the actual player, I'll speak to his character as well, because some fans, of course, are going to be wondering, well, hey, if this is the type of guy who's going to bail on his teammates during the college football playoff, well, none other than his former head coach, James Franklin, really went to bat for him and said he's as good of a teammate as you could have at Penn State, basically, and that this is just simply a product of the current system. You can't blame him for wanting to transfer and actually get to show off his immense talents somewhere else and get to develop them actually on the field. It's just the timing of the playoff and all this stuff. It doesn't really allow for a team that is in the playoff, those players, to really have the same options as a team like Missouri and Iowa, teams who are just simply playing in only the Music City Bowl, that type of deal. So if you're worried about Pribula's character, that type of deal, I just don't think that's really a fair analysis in 2024, and his former coach seems to agree with me. And as many of you are aware, Northwest Missouri State is a very strong program in the Division II level. Well, Missouri has added, last night they announced, A commitment from a former Northwest Missouri State transfer, Langden Kitchen, formerly of Westran High School, by the way, Huntsville, Missouri. Just happened to have some friends in that particular school district. You may remember that Tyler Hunt was from that high school as well, the former Missouri running back. So it's not clear to me, by the way, whether Kitchen has come to Missouri on scholarship or not, but you may remember, well, Cody Schrader wasn't on scholarship at first either, coming from a smaller Missouri school. So you never know what's going to happen here with Langden Kitchen. Congratulations to him. He simply says it's awesome, just what every kid dreams of, and I'm so excited for the opportunity. So an easy one to root for there if you're a Missouri type of person. But one thing, if you want to panic a little bit, I do think this is an interesting question. I'm not ready to panic whatsoever, but the following question here from listener Clayton, he says, could it be that the Cotton Bowl win was our peak? We had a head start with NIL. Now the whole country caught up. Looking at you, Vanderbilt, is our early adapter advantage of NIL usage over? Well, Clayton, really good question. I think I would say it's dissipating. It almost has to be. But is it over? Maybe. Certainly the big advantage that Missouri had a year or two ago, especially in terms of state legislation. Well, I think there's a lot of states out there, including Florida, notably, without a doubt, has closed a lot of those loopholes, if you will, sort of had similar legislation, similar setups. By the way, Missouri was one of the very first operations to bring their NIL game in-house within the university. I think that was a big advantage for the Tigers, again, a year or two ago, potentially. Nowadays, that's more or less what probably everybody in the SEC has done at this point, at least to my knowledge. So I do think that's a really good question to ask. I would say that Missouri's NIL infrastructure is still really strong, but to Clayton's point there, I do think their early adapter advantage has somewhat dissipated. I don't think it's completely gone, but it's not what it used to be. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Now, I mentioned Iowa just a little bit ago. Of course, the Music City Bowl less than 2 weeks away, believe it or not. And, of course, we know that Luther Burden and Armand Bamboo, who are off to the NFL as early entrants, are not going to be playing in that game. Well, Eli Drinkwitz, speaking with the media just recently today, said that Chuck Hicks is not going to play in that game either. And also Brett Norfleet is recovering from a surgery of some kind. So I had predicted we'll see probably a couple injury-related, I wouldn't say opt-outs, but, you know, obviously Norfleet had been playing through some type of injury through the season. They're deciding, hey, let's get a jump on that, jump on the recovery, all that good stuff, not play him in. I mean, there's a decision, a business decision being made here. Not a criticism whatsoever. Just this is kind of how these bowl games are going these days, I would say. So there may still be some more of those yet, but hopefully if it's just Hicks and Norfleet, Missouri should be relatively at full strength, I would say. And by the way, speaking of Eli Drinkwitz and speaking to the media, he said he doesn't know and he doesn't care if there was tampering involved with Kewan Lacey, Williams Winery, Jaylen Brown, those type of players that have left the program. Well, why is that? Why doesn't Eli Drinkwitz care? Let's talk about that coming up on the program here in just a little bit. But first, I got to tell you that it is that time of year. The college football playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. So in talking with the media this afternoon, Eli Drinkwitz made reference to a player who entered the portal and then was signed elsewhere 7 hours later. Well, pretty obvious he was talking about Keywan Lacey there, I would say, the erstwhile Missouri running back. But he says he doesn't care. He doesn't care if there was any tampering involved with any of these players because nothing will be done about it one way or the other. So why get worked up about it? That's the practical way that Eli Drinkwitz is choosing to look at this. And when it comes to the current state of college football in general, it feels like Drinkwitz is legitimately frustrated, but he's not really complaining per se, but he's not exactly sitting around and waiting for lawsuits and settlements in the legal system that are going to solve everything magically. And he's basically saying people need to, including himself, need to get used to what's basically become a 6-month free agency period for everybody in the sport, and cautions Missouri fans that, hey, this is all part of the deal. It's all going to be okay, but also sort of sending a message to younger players that we value production over potential. That seemed like a message to some of those young players who, well, maybe found their way out of the program, and others who might be considering it, coming to Mizzou, whatever it might be. But really, that's a bigger topic. Really, the more major news coming out of Eli Drinkwitz's press conference this afternoon is that Sam Horn is on the mend. He's now 11 months out from Tommy John surgery, which at least a 1-year recovery there is generally about the ballpark you're looking at least to start throwing, that type of deal. So I would say, if anything, Horn is slightly ahead of schedule here. You know, he's not practicing or anything like that, just started throwing. They're following rehab very closely along with the baseball medical staff as well. Horn is in the rehab phase where he's finally starting to throw a little bit, and hopefully this spring the idea is he's going to be ramped up to the point where he's going to be participating in spring ball and playing baseball here in just a few months. And the quote is, really the money quote is, the plan is there for him to be fully involved in spring practice and baseball. So if you're one of those fans who's been stumping for Sam Horn to be the starter over anybody in the current transfer portal market, well, health-wise, it sounds like he's going to get every chance to do exactly that. So that's really encouraging, regardless of your opinions on the quarterback position, because obviously the more the merrier. I think the more the competition Missouri has there, the better. I'm certainly not being dismissive of Sam Horn whatsoever. Once again, I just don't think you can push all of your chips into that basket at this point. It's simply not a reliable option. Is it an option? Absolutely, is Sam Horn. But a reliable one, I don't think you can say that whatsoever on December 18th, 2024. We'll see this fall. And in what was a bit of a lackadaisical start for Missouri against Jacksonville State on the basketball court yesterday, the Tigers leading just by 1 at halftime, 41-40. That was just the second time this season that Missouri had allowed its opponent to score 40 or more in the first half. California had 51 against the Tigers just a couple of weeks ago. But Missouri pulled away largely thanks to Jacob Cruz with an incredibly hot second half overall with 19 points, including 6 3-pointers for Cruz. So I've always had a soft spot for tall guys who can shoot the basketball. So it's been nice to see Trent Pierce get going lately. By the way, he continued his stellar play here with 12 points on just 5 shot attempts, by the way, yesterday. So another good game from Pierce, but probably even more encouragingly, Jacob Cruz, who really is yet to find his footing, I would say, with the Tigers, showed exactly what I think Dennis Gates and fans were expecting out of him, which is a guy who can absolutely knock down shots with just about anybody in the country when he's right. So I felt a little bit bad for Cruz at times. You know, the minutes have just been hard to come by here and there on a team that has a lot of talent, for sure. A lot of young talent, a lot of veteran talent as well. But Cruz, give him some credit. The veteran was ready to hear his name called last night, and Missouri really needed it. Without Cruz, it's questionable. Definitely suspect if Missouri wins that game. You know, it just, to be honest, it never really felt like the Tigers were ever really locked in defensively. And I think if you're Dennis Gates, that's almost a positive, because now you can say to your team, you don't even have to yell and scream about it. You can just be like, hey guys, we're going to have to focus on defense. We're going to have to play hard every single game in the SEC. As others have pointed out, if you look at KenPom right now, cut it off the top 70 teams in the country, I believe all 16 teams in the conference are in the top 70 to 75 or so. That is just a gauntlet. There's not going to be one easy game on your schedule in the Southeastern Conference for this season. So if you're the Tigers, get ready for it. Gird your loins. Play hard every single night, especially defensively. And frankly, the Tigers have got to work a little bit harder on the glass. I think they just have to be more aware of the glass, especially maybe the guards. According to Dennis Gates, he frankly said our guards did not rebound the ball well. There were a lot of long rebounds, 50-50 loose balls that our guards either overran and collapsed our defensive shell. It's not on the bigs. It was on the guards. So that is always important to realize. A lot of times with the proliferation of fantasy basketball, all that type of stuff, people tend to focus on individual rebounding statistics. But of course, really rebounding is as much of a team element as anything in basketball. You leave one guy unaccounted for, well, often that guy is the one who gets the offensive rebound. Mark Mitchell said, we need to improve our rebounding. I think point blank, they beat us in offensive rebounds and got second chance points. So again, to my point, I think Missouri just maybe got caught a little bit flat-footed here, which is frankly understandable. We're about a week out from Christmas. The Tigers are coming off of an enormous high from the Kansas game. It doesn't get any better than that in terms of ecstasy and pure joy on the basketball court. So it's understandable that after these last couple games here, one before this, now this one against Jacksonville State, that obviously are games that Missouri very much expects to win as a huge favorite in the ball game. But you know what? Give Jacksonville State some credit. They were game. They played harder than Missouri did, and they got caught napping a little bit. Fortunately, it wasn't a loss. Just a good learning experience, I think, for the Tigers. Tamar Bates, who has been so good this season, well, maybe Dennis Gates sent him a little bit of a message, only playing 21 minutes in this ball game. 1 of 6 was Tamar. So a quiet game for Bates with just 2 points, but obviously the Tigers end up pulling it out anyway. Hopefully this is just a good learning experience and teachable moment for Dennis Gates and his squad. And coming up on the show, I've got a north end zone construction update for you. And you know what? There's some divided opinions on my lighthearted Kansas segment on whether Missouri should take a Kansas player or not in the portal and under what circumstances. Yes, I'll get to your feedback here in just a minute. But first, let's talk some FanDuel, where you can get ready to tackle the NFL action, as always, with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And you know what? Let's look up that Missouri-Iowa line. I'm pretty sure it's going to stick at 3.5 until kickoff, unless some other major news breaks. And yes, we're sitting right at 3.5. That really does seem like a good line to me the more I think about it. So no real value to be had, but there's always opportunities at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And make your holidays bigger and brighter with PrizePicks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks, and PrizePicks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. This week on PrizePicks, I got to tell you, I'm looking at the football board. To me, Jared Goff for more than 230 yards passing and Saquon Barkley for more than one touchdown. Yes, I need you, Saquon, in my fantasy semifinals as well. But no matter what you're into, you got to download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. It's PrizePicks. Run your game. Well, if you're not a local like me, or maybe you just haven't been by Faurot Field lately, you may not have noticed a lot of construction already well underway for the North End Zone project. In fact, the Tiger team store, the bathrooms, the brick buildings essentially that house those bathrooms on the North Concourse, and the team store as well. Well, that's all gone. It's all been completely demolished and wiped out already. The video board has been taken down. Remaining is really just a couple of pillars, at least as of yesterday, that remained from said video board. So a lot of progress already been made here. Obviously, Missouri wasting no time here trying to get that baby ready for the kickoff of the 2026 football season. By the way, it looks kind of cool right now with Faurot Field being more open. Enjoy it while it lasts, though, because obviously the North End Zone is going to be changing that look forever, as Faurot Field is going to be fully enclosed for the first time ever. And by the way, had on my lighthearted Kansas segment yesterday, read an email from the great Blake Stark. Well, Music Lova 314, a commenter, said that anti-KU piece made me laugh so hard I'm cramping in tears. LOL, MIZ. Well, ZOU back to you, and I'm glad you enjoyed it and glad you got a laugh, because that was definitely the point of said segment there for sure. One listener, though, was not as impressed. He said that was a very childish take on taking Kansas players in the portal and adding them to the University of Missouri. Get with the times, read the room, and put your petty differences aside. The kids nowadays are getting paid. You better take who you can get. Well, first of all, this is a very childish take. Well, thank you, and you're welcome. But you know what? Finally, one comment from Matt, who said, try a St. Louis hat on once in a while. You do realize you have fans on this side of Missouri. Well, first of all, Matt, I am known as a broadcasting treasure in St. Louis. I think we're all very much aware of that. Secondly, I do wear a St. Louis Blues shirt on the show on occasion. What, is that not doing it for you? Come on. Seriously, folks, I got nothing against St. Louis. I actually root for the St. Louis Cardinals. Just not as much as the Royals. They're my original team. But if I have a National League team, it's the Cardinals. I've been to Busch Stadium, probably the new Busch Stadium, probably, I don't know, 15 or 20 times. I'm a baseball fan. Don't take this stuff so seriously, everybody. Anyway, regardless, thanks for joining the show as always. And if you'd like to comment, hit me up, obviously, on YouTube or anywhere on social media at Locked On Mizzou, or hit me with an email, lockedonmizzou@gmail.com. So until next time, I am John Miller, and thanks as always for listening to Locked On Mizzou.